Thanks for joining us. My name is Ibrahim Sani. This is Notepad. We're looking at some of the more interesting areas of concern when it comes to the economy. We need to ask ourselves, what is Malaysia's position when it comes to the global space economy? Joining me are two very distinguished guests. On my right is Datuk Dr. Yusoff Sulaiman of MASIC, or the Malaysian Industry Government Group for High Technology, and to his right is Dato Kamarul Redzuan Muhamed, the President of MASIC, or the Malaysian Space Industry Corporation. We start off with Dato Yusoff first. Let's talk about how we should frame the thinking of Malaysia when it comes to the space industry as a frontier technology for Malaysia. What would Malaysia need to do to ensure that we remain competitive in this space sector?
Well, thank you, Ibrahim. Well, the industry is new as far as Malaysia is concerned. It's still in the infancy stage, but we feel that the space technology is a very strategic industry for Malaysia to pursue, because we feel that in future every socio-economic activity or programs will be using space generated data and information. So we cannot leave ourselves to be over-dependent on other countries' sources. So the thing is that we need to start now to actually develop the competency and capacity of this technology, either in the universities or in our companies. So I think the position Malaysia should take is to now put our resources, put our efforts together to develop the space industry for the future.
What about Dato Kamarul here? Do you feel that that is a sentiment that is shared by MASIC as well?
Thanks, Ibrahim. I think the first of all, space technology will be the key technologies for everything that we are going to do in the future. I mean, a lot of people think about space technology is about space programs and all that, but it's actually, it involves everyday activities, our ways, what do you call this, telecommunication, internet and all that. So the space technology is a core thing for everything in the future. So I think it is important for us to position ourselves to be able to make sure that the country, we build enough capability and capacity to support this technology and industry. So
space technology and space economy is very closely related. We're looking at some of the estimates by Space Foundation. In 2021, the global space economy was worth approximately $469 billion. It is expected to reach 10 trillion in the next 6 or 7 years until 2030. So the growth is exponential. How does space technology interrelate with space economy? In this respect, where does Malaysia fit in the story? Maybe Dato Kamarul can take this.
As we have mentioned earlier, we are still at the infancy, but the opportunity is boundless. It's so big. At the moment, I think the industry only generating about 20 to 30 million a year. Okay?
For Malaysia?
For Malaysia, for the upstream side, for the downstream side. But if we want to continue build this business into a bigger picture, we really need to look at the upstream, midstream, and the downstream. At the end of the day, what we are looking at is the data that we are going to use to make sure that we can have actionable activities from this data that we created or get from the space. So to relate to your questions, I think we need to have the full supply chain from upstream to midstream and downstream, so that we can achieve the target that's set by the government under Dasar Angkasa Negara, so that it will generate roughly about 10 billion revenue for our GDP annually by 2030.
The National Space Policy or Dasar Angkasa Negara is actually quite important for us to explore and deep dive into. Dato Yusoff, my thinking is this. Space economy is a highly intensive capital industry to explore. Isn't space the domain of, say, quote-unquote rich countries? And where do Malaysia fit when it comes to trying to assail countries that have a bigger, I guess, capital firepower, so to speak, in making sure that this is a winnable area for us?
Right. Well, it used to be the domain of the rich countries, but as we know, the cost of even satellite launching and etc. is coming down rapidly because of the volume that is now involved in this economy. So one is that it's now within the reach of the developing countries and smaller companies as compared to the huge companies in the Western world. So we are now in the position where we can actually enter the industry without worried too much about the high capital costs. Secondly is that we should be able to look at some of the niche rather than go full blast in terms of developing the whole gamut of programs, activities under the space economy's definition. So I think, firstly, we have to think about becoming part of the global supply chain rather than becoming the OEM straight away. So this will give us the learning curve for us to go towards that becoming OEM in the future. But I think that should be the target. But that should be given time for our companies to really grow, develop their competency, and getting ideas and thoughts from innovators on what would be the products that will be needed in the future. So it's within our reach. And government has also to think about the trade-off of not doing it. Because many things, events like climate change, deforestation, natural disasters are all, predicted to be happening more regularly. Are we prepared for that? So we have no choice. We have to invest in the satellite technology, and therefore, by the way, create a space economy for ourselves and also for the world. So the push is already there. It's not much of a choice. It's just now how are we going to approach it in a more economic, more feasible way in terms of these space technology.
Dato Kamarul, do you feel that we need to clearly identify the purpose of us doing this? Because different countries have different objectives. Military is one of the key area of motivation for countries to explore space technology. Countries that are in conflict or possible conflict, we're looking at, say, for instance, China and the US might want to either consolidate their position in the global space sector, or do you feel that we can actually try to supplement our own cause? Do you feel that we need to define our own thesis of exploring this agenda?
I think that the purpose of going to the space business is quite clearly charted in the Malaysia Space Exploration 2030, okay? And also it's quite clearly defined in SISP 2030 as well. Okay? So we are looking at the technology developments, capability development, reducing the reliance to the international players, and so on and so forth. I think in terms of purpose, why we need to do this is quite clear. What we need to have clearer is how do we implement this and how we can make sure that this program is sustainable and is a long term, so that it can create sustainable programs. It's not just one-off satellite programs, then we got it done with it and then we forgot about it. It has to be multiple years, multiple disciplinary, multiple agency that prolongs over longer period of time, so it become an economy by itself rather than just a single program. And I think that is something that what MASIC try to work with the government, try to say, look, this is where the capability and capacities of the industry where we are now, but to get to this end point where we want, we need to have these long-term programs. And I think that is what we are trying to do, is try to match what is the government desire and what is the capabilities that the industry have at the moment, and how to get there at the end point.
This also means public-private partnership has to be enhanced.
Correct.
We're looking at companies that are incumbents right now, private companies that can help the government achieve its aspirations. But there is also an opportunity for up-and-coming or yet to be formed companies to try and see and find their place in this sector. Do you feel that this could reinvigorate the whole private sector economy for Malaysia when they think about trying to be partnering with the government or governmental institutions in this?
Right. I think the public-private is a necessity. That kind of cooperation must be the modus operandi for us to move forward. We can't do without the other. One is that the needs is coming from the government. Like I mentioned, they need to do a lot of monitoring, surveillance of things that will protect the people. Mention natural disasters, climate change, and and also the livelihood of people through agriculture, fishery, and etc. has to be complemented by this kind of technology to make us competitive in the market. But the industry has to lead it. The industry has the innovation, has the flexibility, has the resources to actually invest and do the business in this industry. But they need a lot of support, especially in terms of policy, in terms of skills, talented people going into the industry. We talk about the funding, first funding, maybe to help them to initiate their businesses. I foresee that there will be a lot of intersectoral participation, because it's not only stopped at the space economy directly, but it has a lot of spin-outs. You talk about telecommunication, talk about data analytics. It is a huge opportunity, it's a huge applications going through all sorts of sectors and industry. So I think our mindset must be that this is not a business for itself, but it is a business that we need to go into to create new businesses and for us to be competitive in the future.
I think what you're referring to, of course, is being a backbone or a technology enabler, an infrastructure, so to speak. Yeah. Nobody talks about the building roads just for building roads. Right. It is actually an enabler for other sectors to grow. Nobody talks about telecommunication towers as just being as is. It is actually trying to be a catalyst to other industries. Right. Space technology is also that as well. And it's also important for us to identify where we are at right now, in order for us to identify the journey that we need to be. One can argue that Malaysia is not starting from zero. We are already in this area in the space game, so to speak. From my employers, Miasat 1, Miasat 2, we've seen how RazakSat is a design in Malaysia, low Earth orbit or LEO satellite. These are already, success stories that we can rely on and build upon. Do you feel that this sustained growth in this area has to be maintained? The stamina, the momentum has to continue on, or else we might lose steam halfway and this might just fizzle out at the end of the day. Right. How do we move ahead when it comes to sustaining the momentum, as per what you alluded to, Dato Kamarul?
I think, first of all, make no mistake, space business is still very complex. Pretty high capex compared to the normal business. So it requires, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. It requires a time that we chart the programs and capabilities very clearly. As you said, space is not a new business for Malaysia. As a matter of fact, in 1996, when we first launched, we launched the first satellite in the region. And compared to some of the developed country and the first world country, we actually launch it earlier than them. But because of the program is not continuous, I think, sadly to say, we don't have the continuity, all right? So what we have to do right now, at least what in the industry thing has to do, is we need to improve the, government and private-public partnership, because as what Dato Yusoff already said, the biggest users of the data is the government, okay? They need to provide the backbone for the industry to come in and invest. And this has to be a long term. And it has to be always a long-term program. We have to look at beyond 5 years. We have to look beyond 10 years. At the moment, we don't have that stamina just yet. But the newly launched MSE and SISP recently launched at Lima, I think it was quite clear programs that they are trying to do, so that we can have a sustainable programs towards the future and create the space-based industry in the countries. Okay,
speaking of what was launched at Lima, MASIC had a soft launch at Lima very recently. The Prime Minister, Datuk Dr. Ibrahim, has made a lot of overtures in terms of trying to see how we can move as one, so to speak. Maybe you can talk to the effect of the newly minted 68-member consortium of MASIC and what it intends to achieve as a collective.
Okay. MASIC is, first of all, is initiated by the government, but it will be led by the industry players. Okay, so it's already have a good start where the government and the industry work together. Okay, the idea of MASIC is to put all the members of the MASIC, which is the core space player, to actually to power the growth of a space industry. At the moment, as what Dr. Yusoff has mentioned, that we have a part and parcel of a business player in the space, but it's not enough for us to become a good, big players. So by putting everybody together through MASIC, we hope that we can actually go beyond Malaysia, bring all these players outside Malaysia, and create the what do you call the space industry based in Malaysia. The key objective, part of a key objective of MASIC is also at the same time is to align what the industry want and what the government want. We don't want that what the government want is too far away from what the industry is ready to provide. And if there is the gap inside there, how do we make sure that the industry can cope up and then fill up the gap as well? Okay. So the idea for MASIC is really try to put all together all the members that we have, try to actually establish a powerful coalition so that we can actually create the growth in the space industry.
I'm looking at this at a very operational aspect of things. And while we have lofty ideals and lofty targets, it's also important to see who are the individuals, the human beings that is intending to do this. You have MASIC, which is a consortium that has one objective, but let's be practical here. There's a lot of interests or minor objectives that is going to be involved. It's a consortium. Different people have different wants and needs. And then you were talking or alluded to Dato Yusoff earlier on. There is a potential, not even potential, there is a need for intergovernmental, intersectorial relationship. So there are a lot of players that needs to work together in order for these objectives to be met. Who do you think is the right, I guess, party to quarterback this particular movement? Do you feel that MITE is the right position to pull together all these objectives?
Well, we have the experience of doing that. Way back in the 1990s, we developed the aerospace industry from almost zero to then now about 20 billion annual GDP contributor. So there is, I think, the strength in getting people together. They don't have to be working in terms of the business itself, but they could actually work together in terms of skills and talent development, research and development, sharing, and a lot of things. But we need a focal point where government can look to for advice from the industry. It will be difficult for the government to go to each individual company to get their own views and etc. So they need this kind of focal point. And also we are thinking not just depending on the Malaysian market. We're talking about the ASEAN market, for example. Because EU did that, they pull everybody together and make it into the European Space Agency's initiative. We should be thinking like that too. But when we do that, we need focal points from each countries, ASEAN countries especially, to come together and start to have this conversation. And I think that's what I think MASIC is really doing now, is having that conversation, getting everybody together in terms of one aspiration, one direction, having that conversation with the government, with the universities and etc. to pull them together. And universities are doing quite a good job. I think last night there was a team from USM going for the global space competition. So these are the things that we need to excite. We used to have Sheikh Muzaffar as a very important icon, and suddenly school children wants to become an astronaut. So these are the things that we have to bring back in order to leverage on our experience and etc. But again, the company that was defunct a few years ago when they were leading the satellite development initiative, all is not lost because we actually develop we develop people in the space industry, which now actually heading many of these smaller companies that are doing the space technology business now. So all is not lost. So we have actually done well in terms of developing the human talent, and now they have come forward to lead their own companies and etc. So it's a good, I think, thing to happen when that big company dies off. Smaller companies exist. So for me, it's quite good.
You've highlighted an idea right now where we can talk about quadruple helix model, where academia, industry, government, and of course civil society can come together and pull this off collectively. But you know, while we look at, say, for instance, the European Space Agency as a model for us to work with, that is a function of the European Union, a function of a political situation where they have a single market. So there's a lot of economic elements behind the creation of ESA that might not necessarily have or happen here in ASEAN. So that is a big chip on our shoulder that we need to navigate. Do you feel that these kind of challenges might slow down our aspirations in terms of trying to build together a collective voice, at least in this part of the world, in achieving a singular target of growing our space economy?
I think there's a lot of motivation among the ASEAN countries to look for solutions with regard to some of the common problems that we are facing. You know, for example, we in Indonesia about the palm oil lobby in Europe. With better data management or you know, using excellent images, we can actually make our case that there has been not the kind of accusation on deforestation and etc. by giving good examples, good data, good images that may be coming from there. And again, you know, countries like Philippines are suffering from natural disasters every 2-3 months or so. So this is again a way of collecting the efforts by all ASEAN countries to mitigate the impact of natural disasters by using a lot of these satellite-based data and images. So I think that commonality of issues and challenges may drive that coalition together. And I think, yes, I mean, we are not going for the one market objective, but there are a lot of other things also with regard to security and defense or the South China Sea and etc., which we have to come together somehow. But we, on our own, it's difficult for us to think that we can invest so much into that technology to fulfill all our needs. But collectively, we may be able to do so, and we may be able to do that with a lot of cost optimization, but with a big impact for all the countries that are involved.
It's interesting that you brought that topic up, Dato Yusoff, because I wouldn't imagine anybody being an opponent to this. However, when you look at intergovernmental meetings, they have a checklist that they have to go through, and I don't know where the priority for space economy is going to be on that list. I cannot imagine it being really up at the top in terms of the top 10 things that they want to do. What I'm trying to allude is, do you feel that there has to be a loud voice or voices that has to continuously shout about this in order for this to be constantly on the table, constantly in the view of, say, politicians, policymakers, industry leaders, and many more? Do you think that is the key focus of the conversation right now, moving forward in order for us to realize our objectives?
Yeah, I think the visibility now is provided by MASIC. As far as our conversation with our Indonesian counterpart, again, space is one of their priorities too. But I think the government is looking at it from a point of view that it might be involving a lot of capex, which they want to use for other more basic requirements. But if we don't invest now, the problem is that this problem that we have, the basic problem that we have, may multiply in the future. So MASIC has a role to play to become that voice to actually remind the government that these are the kind of things that we need to do, developmental, not necessarily a business objective at the end of the day, but is to prepare the country for the future's challenges.
A strategic industry.
It is, very much so.
I feel that the collaboration between multiple countries in ASEAN is already ongoing. But as you rightly pointed out, it's probably not in the highest priority. But when it comes to space business, the sovereignties is always a top priorities as well. So when people talk about the space industry, there is always that element sort of playing the potential speed bumps in terms of progressing, working togetherness. But the benefit of it is probably multiple fold better than the speed bump. So I think MASIC here is trying to make sure that we can push the agenda of looking at the Asian region rather than just a specific country. At the moment, the industry is too small for one industry, one player to invest just by looking at single country. So I think by looking at the bigger market space, and I think it will help the investment come into this business as well. But as I said again, the biggest issues normally when it comes to data come from the skies is always sovereignties, and we need to address that.
Fantastic. Thank you for taking the time to speak with us. If people want to learn more about this or try to participate, how do they go about this?
Well, you can get in touch with MASIC or MIT. We're able to channel whatever their requirements are, rightly. We are actually inviting more participants, more interest in this space industry. We hope also that we can have more conversations with other players in other sectors that may benefit from the space technology and etc. So I think the call is that please do approach us and let's have that conversation to to go through.
They have a hashtag, let's collaborate, better future together. Those are the kind of hashtag that you can actually search for on social media. Again, just to echo Dato Yusoff, just head off to MIT or Malaysian Industry Government Group for High Tech, and of course you can also head off to MASIC or the Malaysian Space Industry Corporation. Earlier on you just heard from Datuk Dr. Yusoff Sulaiman, the President and CEO of MIT, and of course before that we heard from Dato Kamarul Redzuan Muhamed, the President of MASIC. For now, these are the resources that you can get for yourself. You can also head off to astroawani.com for more information there as well. My name is Ibrahim Sani. Catch you in the next one.